Yo, what is good? So this video is probably going to come out a little late, but I've been seeing everyone else doing it, and I thought it'd be fun to do it myself. So today we're going to talk about my 5 most productive baits of 2024 as we go into 2025. This list honestly kind of surprised myself, but when I was really thinking about it, I think these were my 5 most productive baits. I'm gonna start out at 5, work my way up to number 1. And I'm gonna be honest, I cheated a little bit because I kind of did more of a category or a technique than I did specific baits. So a couple of these categories have multiple baits in them. But this one right here does not. Number 5 is the Raid Osakana Slide 170. From the time this bait came out to the time I stopped fishing and was really just hunting and doing jiu-jitsu, this bait right here, I pretty much caught a fish on it every single time I went fishing. I had this tied on to a rod and I caught fish on it. I caught tons of fish, tons of big fish. Honestly, the Osakana Slide is probably the best starter glide bait I've ever thrown. And I am not a beginner glide bait fisherman, but if you are, check this bait out. You will not be disappointed. And also, if you're a veteran and you've been throwing a glide bait for 20 years, check it out. Next up is a bait that I would probably be number 1 on the list if my season to throw it in Missouri was a little bit longer. That would be the frog, but specifically this frog. I had like an awakening with the Teckle Honker this year. I mean, I started throwing it in 2024, and it's pretty much the only full-size frog I threw this year. I mean, I still threw the big gabbit and the gavacho a little bit, but for like a full-size frog, this was pretty much it. The reason is it's so versatile. It doesn't matter what type of cover you're fishing. It's applicable, honestly. If you're in less than 10 feet of water, you can catch a fish on this bait. It's excellent for mats because these tails are, even when you're on top of the mat, they're still making that noise when you're walking it. You know, if the water's dirty, it catches them. If it's clear, I think the flash off the blade catches them. You can straight retrieve it. You can walk it. I was walking it most of the time, but I did catch a bunch of fish just straight retrieving it too, letting those tails kind of work like a sprinker frog or like a whopper plopper. This bait is kind of hard to walk, but once you figure it out, it's really not that bad. So a frog in general is my number 4, but more specifically the Teckle Honker frog. Great hookup ratio on this frog too. It's very soft, compresses well, and those kind of round bend style hooks just absolutely brain fish. It's an excellent frog. Best frog on the market in my opinion. If I could only have one, it's that, believe it or not. Next we have, this one's kind of hard. I have 2 that could go next. My number 1 is like a literal no-brainer. It's just definitely number 1. I know I created a video that said, talking about jig fishing, that I'm going to release later on, and I said a jig was like my number 1 lure of the year, and that probably is true, but I'm talking like the baits I took to places that I was like, I'm trying to cover some water, find some fish, and catch them. The jig was my number one bait on places that I kind of knew what was going on a little bit, and that was kind of how I dialed it in, if that makes any sense. But you guys probably haven't even seen that video when you're watching this, so I don't know why I'm rambling about it. But my number 3 lure is going to be the shallow crank. And this one I cheated on big time. I have 6 baits in this category, but that was because, I don't know, these were the 6 that I caught the most on, and if you forced me to pick one, I couldn't. In this, I also have 3 flat sides and 3 regular square bills. We'll start off with the flat sides since I started throwing those first. So the reason that I couldn't leave the flat side off is because this spring, early spring tournament fishing, this was my number 1 bait by far, in the early spring. The 3 baits I have are the Spro Little John, specifically in this color. And this is the regular Little John, the one with just a little rubber tungsten ball in there. So it's this silent one. And then I have the Jackal Bling. I didn't catch a fish on this color. I don't think I even threw it. I was throwing this in a craw color mostly too. And then the MB57F from Shimano. If I had to pick 2, it'd probably be, oh, that's tough. I don't think I could do it. If I had to pick 3 flat sides, these are the ones. I mostly throw these in craw colors. Occasionally I'll throw them in a shad pattern, but mostly a craw color. This color killed it for me in the little bit dirtier water. This color was absolute money in the clear water. On a brighter craw color in the Spro Little John, me and my buddy, we fished a tournament where we did not catch a limit. We hooked a limit though. We did not bring a net though, and we were crankbait fishing, and I'm not Brandon Polinick. I'm not that good at grabbing them. So we hooked a good 24-pound 5-fish limit that day, and we lost 2 giants, and we brought in 3 fish for 15 pounds. So this bait catches giants right here, and those are Missouri giants. 5, 6, 6.5, 7 pounders are Missouri giants. So those were my cold water shallow cranks. And then the other 3 baits I have are the Rapala OG Rocco. This was like my smallmouth square bill. For some reason, smallmouth just absolutely crushed this year. And this color, honestly, if I was fishing some clearer if I was cranking for some clearer water smallmouth. And then if I was cranking for some dirtier water smallmouth, the Chartreuse Blackback was just, I've got a couple of those that are sitting on a shelf now because they are just so eaten up. And then my kind of like just workhorse square bill this year was the Lucky Craft LC 1.5. On the OG Rocco, I don't change out the hooks because those hybrid trebles from VMC are actually pretty awesome. But on the LC 1.5, I was running size 4 Hayabusa TBL 930. The next bait I have was kind of like my slightly larger square bill I threw this year. As you can see, slightly larger, kind of more that 2.5 size, and that is the OSP Blitz Max. This is also an amazing, just all around square bill. It's great around rock, wood, you know, just anything. Just running down the bank, you don't know what type of cover you're going to run across. This is a great one. An honorable mention that was a little bit more niche-y for me this year is the Depths of Oak 1.2. That was like my nasty square bill, like tons of stumps, lay downs, stuff like that. You gotta throw the Evoke 1.2. Okay, the next bait is another kind of technique, less than a bait, because I've got a few different baits here that I threw on it a bunch. This is like the only non-power fishing bait I had that I threw this year a ton. And that is, can you guess it just by the baits I have here? It's a free rig, okay? I'll go back through and mention the rods and link them below that I'm throwing all these on. But on the free rig this year, you know, a 1/4 ounce pin free shot and a 2 to 3/0 Ryugi and Finney hook on all these baits, just absolute money. These two were probably my most productive baits, but when they wouldn't eat anything, like literally anything, I was throwing the Doe Live stick, but I only threw that when I had to. But these guys right here, the Loco ISM Vibra Shrimp and the Doe Live Beaver 3.5. This was one of my #1 colors. This and Green Pumpkin Chartreuse. This is a Green Pumpkin Blue Flake. Another color I threw a lot was the Hookup Tackle color Fred. So I threw that, Green Pumpkin Chartreuse, and Fred a bunch. And then honestly, this was the only color I threw in the Loco ISM. This is Mimizu. Kind of like a weird pink earthworm color. And then in the Doe Live stick, I threw a lot of shad colors and a lot of just green pumpkins. That was my #1 finesse bait this year, though. You know, I think fish just see a ton of shaky heads, a ton of tubes, a ton of Ned rigs, stuff like that. So here in the Midwest, not a ton of people are on the free rig train yet. So I'm going to take advantage of it while I can. So last and certainly not least, because this is my #1 lure of 2024, and I've got 2. So this one definitely caught me less fish than the next one I'm going to talk about, but we're going to talk about a swim jig. There was 2 main ones I threw. If I was throwing it on fluorocarbon, about 85% of the time, well, no, if I was throwing it on fluorocarbon, I was either throwing the Waze swimmer with the 3.8 Rhythm Wag, or not Rhythm Wag, Rhythm Wave from Jackal, or I was throwing the Jackal B-Crawl swimmer with the 3.8 Rhythm Wave. This was more of like my just like deeper water stuff. I was usually throwing the 1/2 ounce Waze or the 3/8 ounce B-Crawl. I caught a lot of fish on scope out deep with the Waze, and I caught a lot of fish on the B-Crawl, just, you know, fishing some more open water, standing timber, deeper grass lines. But the bait that I caught by far the most fish on in 2024 is, well, shoot, probably this exact swim jig, like this exact one right here, but the Untamed Tackle Punisher jig. If you can tell, that thing's got a freaking gaff in it. And this was my braid Alabama Shake swim jig, skipping it up under docks. If I was trying to cover water shallow, the second the water hit 53 degrees, this was it right here, all the way through the summer. From pre-spawn through the end of the summer, this was it. If I was pond fishing, this was it. If I was going to a lake, this was it. It didn't matter where I was. I had this tied on, and I caught a ton of fish on it. Funny enough, I caught maybe 2 or 3 5-pounders on this last year, but just the amount of quality, just keeper bites I got on this was more than anything else. I mean, Like, that was my go catch a limit real quick bait, and then throw something like this and upsize. I've got 3 main favorite ways to catch a fish, and that's frogging, throwing a glide bait, and throwing a swim jig. And this year, the swim jig just stood out. So let's talk about, real quick, I'm going to run through this super fast about what rods I threw all these on. So this guy right here threw on a NRX 904 MBR, NRX Plus, with a Corrado K 8-speed. The 8-speed is very important with this. And also, not throwing this on a traditional swim bait rod is important. I don't know why, it's just too much. A traditional swim bait rod is just way too much for this bait. What was my next one I talked about? Was it this guy, the frog? Probably. This honker, I threw on a Champion XP 736 with another Corrado K 8-speed and 50-pound smackdown braid. And then for the shallow cranks, I threw it on the cheapest combo I own, which is a Scheels Ebisu Glass, a Scheels brand rod. It's a glass composite. It's a 7.2 medium moderate, but it's really like a medium heavy, with a Tatula 150 and some 12 to 15 pound Seaguar and Vizex. I'm upgrading that rod this year to an X-Pride 7.2 medium moderate, but last year it was that Scheels Ebisu Glass. And if you're looking for a budget cranking rod, that is easily the best one I've ever thrown. I'm also about to pick up a USA Destroyer P5 Javelin, and I'm sure that bait will throw these square bills pretty well too. For the free rig, I threw that on. If you know free rig fishing, you're not going to be surprised. I threw that on the P5 Destroyer Windbuster with a 2500 ballistic MQ. I was running either 15 pound Suffix 832 to an 8-pound leader of some sort, or I switched over to the All Might braid, and I was throwing I think it was the 19 pound, which is actually like a 13-pound braid, to an 8-pound leader. So if you're looking for the best spinning rod on the market to do the most stuff, that rod will do everything except for throw a tiny Ned rig and a drop shot. But if you want to do literally anything else on a spinning rod, check out that Windbuster. And then for the swim jig, this guy right here, I threw that mostly on either a 7.6 medium heavy X-Pride with a Metanium, or a well, no, actually I didn't throw that with the X-Pride on the Metanium. I threw that with a 7-speed MGL on the X-Pride. I switched the Metanium on the X-Pride to throw bottom contact stuff because it's an 8-speed, but the MGL was a 7-speed. But I also threw this on a Daiwa Kage 7.3 medium heavy with a Tatula 100. But for the braid swim jig, I actually threw it on a softer rod than that Kage or the X-Pride. It's still a medium heavy, but it's a very soft medium heavy. And that rod was the F5 custom rod 7.4 medium heavy, the S5 Ghost Code, F5 Ghost Code 7.4 medium heavy with a 7-speed Shimano Chronarch and 40-pound Smackdown, or 40-pound 832, just, you know, if I needed to switch it out. The reason I throw that softer rod with this is I think if I throw like a traditional braid swim jig rod, I miss a ton of bites. But that combo right there with that bait was my #1 fish catcher last year. Make sure y'all like, subscribe, leave a comment. Tell me what your best baits of the year were, what you threw it on. And make sure you tell literally every single person you know about this video. I appreciate the watch. I'll see y'all next time. I got to go to work. Peace.